Marco Reyes lost everything in 14 minutes. His warehouses, his accounts, his network of shell companies, all of it collapsed in a single coordinated strike, and he never saw it coming because he spent 3 years looking at Donna Cahill and seeing nothing worth watching. That was his mistake, and it was the last one he ever made. Donna Cahill had worked the back office of Salvatore Ferrante's import business for 6 years. She was 34, full-figured, with dark hair she kept pinned at the nape of her neck and reading glasses she pushed up her nose when she was thinking hard, which was always. She was the kind of woman who filled a room not with noise but with a particular quality of stillness, the kind that made certain people nervous without knowing why. She had a degree in financial forensics from Loyola and a second certification in cybersecurity infrastructure she'd earned on nights and weekends while everyone else was sleeping. Nobody at the Ferrante operation knew about the second one. Donna had made sure of that. Salvatore Ferrante ran Chicago's near North Side with a precision that other men in his position envied and feared. He was 41, lean with gray already threading his temples, and he had built his organization on one principle: information before action, always. He was not a man who made scenes. He was not a man who raised his voice. People who worked for him described him later, when interviewed by journalists writing breathless retrospectives, as someone who always seemed to know more than he was saying. They were right. He did. Marco Reyes controlled the South Loop distribution network, and he had been quietly cannibalizing Ferrante's roots for 18 months. He was charming at dinner tables and methodical in boardrooms and completely comfortable with cruelty when cruelty was efficient. He had come from money that ran out, and the hunger that left behind had calcified inside him into something hard and specific. A need to be the largest man in every room he entered. Everything he did, every deal, every intimidation, every alliance, traced back to that original wound. He never examined it. Men like Marco Reyes rarely do. The evening it began, Ferrante's people had gathered at Capolino's for a quarterly dinner. It was the kind of restaurant where the lighting was expensive and the noise level was calibrated, and everyone at every table understood that something more than food was being consumed. Donna was there because she was always there, invisible in the way that efficient people become invisible, handling the account details, managing the seating arrangements, doing the 10 small things that made large evenings run without friction. Marco Reyes arrived uninvited. That alone told Ferrante something. Uninvited guests at these dinners were not accidents. Reyes moved through the room with the particular swagger of a man performing confidence, which is a different thing entirely from actually having it. He stopped at Donna's position near the reservation stand, where she was quietly cross-referencing a list against the room layout. He looked at her the way certain men look at women they have decided do not matter. "You're in the way," he said, not quietly. The table nearest them went still. Donna looked up from her papers without urgency. "Mr. Reyes, you're not on the list for this evening." "I'm talking about the doorway." He gestured, a lazy sweep of his hand. "Big girl like you, it's a fire hazard." The laughter that followed was the worst kind, not genuine, but reflexive. The laughter of people who are afraid to be associated with the target by staying silent. 3 people at the nearest table. One of the waitstaff quickly suppressed the soft percussion of a room deciding, in real time, that Donna Cahill was not someone worth defending. She did not flush. She did not look down. She held his gaze for a moment longer than was comfortable, then returned her attention to her papers. "Your name isn't on the list," she repeated. "The kitchen closes at 10. She stepped aside, not because he had won, because she had already decided that this moment would not be the one that mattered. Across the room, Salvatore Ferrante had watched all of it. He sat very still, his wine untouched, his expression giving away nothing at all. But his eyes tracked Donna as she walked back to her station, and something shifted in his assessment of the evening. Not toward anger, though the anger was there, quiet and cold, but toward attention. She had not flinched. Most people flinch. Psychologists call what Marco Reyes demonstrated that evening contempt, and John Gottman, after 4 decades of research into human dynamics, identified it as the single most destructive force in any relationship between people. Far more corrosive than anger because it doesn't express frustration, it expresses a fundamental verdict. You are beneath consideration. What Gottman also found, though this part is discussed less often, is that contempt rarely destroys its target. It destroys the person who carries it because it makes them stop paying attention to what they're looking at. Marco Reyes stopped paying attention to Donna Cahill. That was when she went to work. For 18 months, Donna had been watching the erosion of Ferrante's South Loop routes with the methodical patience of someone reading a very long document with very small print. She had noticed the pattern before anyone else. A slight skew in shipment timing, a series of shell accounts that appeared in the receivables for 3 weeks and then vanished. The kind of forensic footprint that only someone trained to look for it would catch. She had said nothing. Not yet. She had kept a parallel set of files on an encrypted drive she kept in her apartment, building a case the way a prosecutor builds a case. Slowly, completely, without gaps. She had also, in the 18 months prior to that, quietly identified and mapped the entire technical infrastructure of Reyes's operation. Not because anyone asked her to, because she had understood, from the moment she first noticed the skew, that information without the means to act on it is just documentation. She had both. She had been waiting for the right moment to be useful with them, the moment when the use would be clean and total and impossible to walk back. Marco Reyes, emboldened by the evening at Capolino's, and by 3 years of Donna being invisible, made his move in March. He attempted a hostile takeover of 2 of Ferrante's primary account structures using a series of fraudulent transfer authorizations. It was sophisticated work. It would have been invisible to most financial teams. The attack was designed to look like internal embezzlement, to look, specifically, like it came from Ferrante's own back office. It was designed to look like it came from Donna, she found out on a Thursday morning. She sat with that knowledge for approximately 45 minutes, cross-referencing everything against her private files, confirming every chain of evidence. Then she made 3 phone calls, not to Ferrante's people, not to anyone in the organization, to 3 independent financial forensics contacts she had cultivated over 6 years for exactly the reason that one day she might need a corroborating witness who had no stake in the outcome. Then she called Salvatore Ferrante. "I need 30 minutes," she said. "Bring no one." He came alone. What she showed him in those 30 minutes was not a problem. It was a solution. Every transaction Reyes had moved, traced to its actual origin. Every shell account mapped. The specific technical vulnerability Reyes had exploited, and the patch she had already written and could deploy in under an hour. The 3 independent confirmations. The full dossier on Reyes's South Loop operation, 18 months of it, presented in a format that could be handed directly to the right federal attorney with 0 additional preparation. And one more thing. A contingency she had built into Reyes's own system, a quiet piece of code she had inserted through an access point he didn't know existed, that would, on her signal, redirect every one of his active accounts into a holding structure that would take him 3 years and 7 lawyers to untangle, if he ever could. Ferrante looked at her for a long time. "How long have you had this?" he said. "The Reyes file? 18 months. The access point? 8 months?" She pushed her glasses up. "I didn't want to use it until I understood the full picture." Nobody in that room understood yet what they had just witnessed, but Ferrante was beginning to. The venue Reyes chose for his moment of apparent triumph was a penthouse suite in the West Loop, his ground, his people, the kind of setting designed to communicate that the other party was already at a disadvantage. He had called the meeting to demand a formal concession of the South Loop accounts. He expected Ferrante to arrive diminished, aware that his internal controls had failed, looking for terms. Donna arrived 3 minutes before Ferrante. She walked into that room with her files under her arm and her laptop bag over one shoulder, and she sat down at the table and opened both without particular ceremony. Two of Reyes's men exchanged a look. A back-office woman carrying paper to a concession meeting. It confirmed everything Reyes had decided about this situation. He leaned back in his chair and smiled. "You brought your accountant." "I brought the person who has been running your competition," Ferrante said, "since before you knew you had any." Donna opened her laptop and turned it to face the room. The screen showed a single spreadsheet, clean, precise, annotated in her handwriting. Every fraudulent transfer, every shell account, dates, amounts, the technical routing that proved origin. 3 independent certifications from forensic auditors whose names Reyes recognized because they had testified in federal cases. The second document she placed on the table was a printed filing, federal, already submitted, with a confirmation timestamp from that morning. Reyes looked at it. The smile stayed on his face for a moment longer than it should have, which is what happens when the brain has registered catastrophe, but the body hasn't caught up yet. Then he looked at Donna with an expression she had seen before, the specific recalibration of a man realizing that what he dismissed was the thing that ended him. "You don't have the standing to." "The filing is in the name of the 3 independent auditors," Donna said. "I'm not in it at all." She closed the laptop. "Your South Loop accounts will be inaccessible starting at noon today. That's not a threat. That's a description of something that has already happened." The denial phase lasted approximately 90 seconds, then the understanding, then the particular silence that is the sound of a man who built his entire identity on being the largest person in the room, discovering that he has been the smallest one for years. Ferrante stood. He had said almost nothing. He didn't need to. "The conversation you were hoping to have today," he said to Reyes, "isn't available anymore." They left him there. In her landmark research on power dynamics and public humiliation, Dr. Brené Brown documented what she called the difference between shame and guilt. Guilt says, "I did something wrong." Shame says, "I am something wrong." What Marco Reyes experienced in that room was the specific variety of shame that comes not from being caught, but from being revealed, from understanding that the person he had dismissed as beneath notice had, the entire time, been the architect of his undoing. That kind of revelation doesn't just wound. It restructures a person's entire understanding of what they missed and why. He would spend a long time with that. In the car afterward, Ferrante said nothing for several minutes. Donna watched the city move past her window and waited, because she had learned that Ferrante's silences were usually worth waiting for. "The access point in his system," he said finally. "You built that yourself?" "Yes." "While you were managing my accounts and my quarterly dinners and my seating arrangements?" "Yes." Another silence. Then, "At Capolino's." When he said what he said, he didn't specify. He didn't need to. "You already knew then." "I'd known for 8 months. He turned to look at her, not the quick appraisal she had received from him 1,000 times across conference tables, but something slower and more considered, the look of a man revising a map he thought he already knew. "I should have acted." "I didn't need you to," Donna said. "That's the part you're still catching up to." What he offered her that evening was not protection. He was precise about that, which she respected. What he offered was partnership, a seat at the actual table, not the one near the door with the reservation lists and the account files. Co-architecture of the financial infrastructure. Her name on the operational structure, not buried in the organizational chart 3 levels down. She thought about it for exactly as long as it took her to finish her coffee. "I have conditions," she said. "I assumed you would," he said. And for the first time in 6 years of working in the same building, Salvatore Ferrante smiled at Donna Cahill like he meant it. The women in these stories are never who the Marco Reyeses of the world expect them to be. They rarely are. If this one stayed with you, the patience of it, the precision, the slow architecture of a power that nobody saw coming because nobody thought to look, hit like on your way out. It tells the algorithm that stories like this one are worth surfacing. And if you want the next one, subscribe. There's another woman no one is paying attention to. That's always when it gets interesting.